Welcome to Densho's 2022 Virtual Gala.
I'm Toshiko Hasegawa. I'm a Densho board member.
And I'm Dominique Stevens, the Interim Executive Director of Ingersoll Gender Center.
We're going to be your co-hosts tonight, coming to you live from Kirkland Performance Center just outside of Seattle.
You may remember us as co-MCs of other events like the Women's March 2.0 in 2019, or the anniversary of the March on Washington.
Or events commemorating the assassination of Dr. King. Dominique and I have shared many stages together. As civil rights activists and public servants, both from the South End of Seattle and alumna of Garfield High School, we both hold close the legacy of advocacy for civil rights and social justice.
Absolutely. We come from different experiences, but we have so much in common, and it's that common ground upon which we build a better future. Tonight, we're excited to share the stage again for Densho. Many
of you have attended Densho's annual gala in the past, but this year is a particularly monumental occasion in our organizational history. Tonight, after 27 years of service and leadership, our beloved Executive Director, Tom Ikeda, will formally pass the torch to incoming Executive Director, Naomi Ostwald Kawamura. This moment is a culmination of so many hard works and good intentions by the Densho team and broader community that supported a robust search process. And as a board member, I could not be more excited for you to meet the phenomenal woman who has stepped up to serve.
Tonight's theme is telling our next story, because this is the start of a new chapter for Densho. And this is a chapter that can't be written without you. So I hope you have your wallets close by, because we're going to be asking you to dig deep when making your financial contributions tonight.
That's right. As a community, we all have an interest in Naomi and Densho's success, and we're going to do everything in our power to give her the boost she needs to launch into the next chapter. Tonight, we have a goal of raising $850,000. It's a symbol to show Tom how much we value him and how much we appreciate the important work of Densho.
Thanks to early donors and sponsors, we're actually already 74% of the way there, but we need your support to get all the way to our goal. Your contributions are going to go even further tonight, thanks to a generous match from the Oki Foundation and the Densho Board, who will be meeting your donation dollar for dollar. So if you'd like to make a gift now, you can click the donate button on your screen or text Densho to the number below. Thank you for your contributions.
Now, before we move ahead with the program, we'd like to acknowledge that we are on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish peoples. Understanding the complicated ways in which our existence is layered on top of Indigenous people's struggles for sovereignty is critical to understanding our collective history and towards moving towards a place of justice and healing. So we'll be holding the complexity of history in our hearts as we move through this program, and we hope that you do too.
To bring us into the evening, we're going to have a dance performance choreographed by Robyn Mineko Williams, a multidisciplinary artist and director based in Chicago. Tonight's performance is an exclusive preview of her new work in progress, Hisako's House. Robyn will be accompanied by Jacqueline Burnett, currently a dance artist in Hubbard Street Dance, Chicago. Excuse me.
This piece was inspired by Robyn's 96-year-old grandmother, Nancy Hisako Nishimura, who was incarcerated as a teenager in Jerome, Arkansas. Robyn created this piece in response to the many untold stories from her grandmother's life before the war, from World War II incarceration, and from her resettlement in Chicago. Now, even though Robyn may never know all of those stories, Hisako's House is an exploration of how these stories continue to flow through us and the generations beyond. We're honored to welcome Robyn and Jacqueline to the stage. That was so incredible. It's so moving to witness all the different ways that artists are interpreting the stories of the World War II incarceration.
Yes, and I love that Densho is supporting that work. As much as they spent the last 27 years documenting history, they're also engaging artists of all stripes who work to keep that story alive for younger generations.
It's so key. And this next segment is going to highlight other ways that Densho empowers people to keep the story alive. We're going to hear from Barbara Yasui, a longtime Densho volunteer and community member, as well as her father, Homer. They're both keepers of history in their own ways, and we're going to hear about why that work is so important to them and how Densho has helped them do it.
So you have spent years of your retirement researching the family history, collecting documents, annotating documents, writing stuff about our family. Why is that so important to you?
Well, it's important to me because I want my descendants, my posterity, to know the history of their people in the United States, which only begins in 1903. And I think we had a very fortuitous and unique opportunity to gather all that information because our documents were saved during the war. But more than that, because the history of the Japanese in the United States, and particularly the Hood River, is controversial in some cases and very poorly known in most cases. I wanted the world to know about at least one family that we found papers and documents that we can tell the story of at least one family in this little Hood River Valley.
Well, and I appreciate it as somebody who did not live through it, but has only heard the stories.
Yeah.
And this has been really meaningful to me and to members of our family. But for me, it goes beyond just the personal interest in it. I think it's also important that families like ours share our stories with the wider world. And so that's where Densho comes in, that it allows families to tell their stories and have them be preserved for other people to find out about them. So during the past year, you and I have been involved in a couple of Densho projects. So the first one was that we had a grant to do some oral history interviews with some of the Nisei here at the Lakeshore.
Yeah.
And you were one of those interviewees, and along with 11 or 12 other people. So why do you think that it was important to do that?
Well, I think everybody has a unique story to tell. It's peculiar just to themselves, but collectively here at Lakeshore, there are a fair number of older Nisei here who lived through the experience of the World War II evacuation. And, in just a few more years, we're going to be gone, and these stories are going to be lost forever unless somebody collects it, Like I was telling you, some people poo-poo history and laugh at it, but I say, where would we be if we didn't know the history of Jesus Christ or Mahatma Gandhi if somebody didn't write about it or tell about it? So when people say, well, who cares? I care because I want these stories to live.
Okay. Yeah. And the other project that we have been involved in with Densho this year is boxes of family documents, artifacts, and photographs that have been in storage for years. And we inventoried them and then offered them to Densho, and Densho took us up on that offer and came and looked through the boxes and essentially took them away to be digitized and scanned. So why do you think it's so important to have organizations like Densho to do that kind of thing?
Well, in this particular case, the collaboration between the Densho and the Oregon Historical Society, I think, was more than fortuitous. It was really a great opportunity because Densho is interested in documentation mainly of the Japanese-American evacuation.
Yeah, I also agree that it's a wonderful collaboration, and I feel like it's doing a huge service to our family in that there will now be a place where the digitized documents and photographs and artifacts will be housed where anyone in our family is going to have access to that.
That's right.
But even more important to me, because of my background in education, is that those documents and artifacts are going to be accessible to researchers, to authors, to artists, and particularly for me, to teachers and educators to be able to use them for their students. And so, one of the things that I've been helping Densho with is to develop curriculum and teacher workshops. And so it's not only doing a favor to our family and preserving our own family history, but it's preserving it in a way that other people can have access to it. And so I think that's also really, really important.
Okay, I was not prepared for that to be quite so touching.
Yeah, Homer and Barbara, my heroes now. I love how dedicated they are to documenting their family story and that they've really made use of all that Densho has to offer. Their conversation also really highlights how Densho centers community and collaboration in really powerful ways, and that's so critical for documenting and sharing the experience from World War II incarceration.
Agreed. With that, we want to turn our attention to one of the main reasons we're here tonight. Tom Ikeda has spent the last 3 decades of his life building Densho from the ground up. And tonight, we're going to hear from him for the last time as Densho's executive director.
I first came to know Tom while I was president of Seattle JACL, from his presentations at the Sushi Sake Fests and as keynote speaker at the Seattle JACL 95th anniversary. Tom himself is a historian, a keeper and teller of stories, and he does our stories justice. Both of my own Japanese grandparents passed before I was born. I never got the chance to hear their stories. So for me, hearing from our elders in community is my own opportunity to get to know my own history. And it brings me closer to knowing my grandparents in a way that I really thought was possible in this life. Tom helps keep the stories of so many families alive for ourselves and our posterity. He's given so many people hope for a better tomorrow today. In reflecting upon Washington State's own treatment of immigrants and refugees, Governor Inslee has said that, quote, Washington State must be a beacon. And Tom is that light of right and wrong, justice versus injustice, and whether or not we're living up to our ideals as a nation. We're all better for his profound impact. And coming up, we've got a surprise lined up in honor of those incredible contributions that not even Tom knows about quite yet.
Yes, and you're not going to want to miss that. But before we welcome Tom to the stage, let's hear from a few other members of the broader Densho community about the impact he and Densho have had for them.
Hello from Minidoka National Historic Site in Idaho,
on the ancestral lands of the Shoshonean peoples. My name is Ranger Kurt.
And I'm Ranger Emily.
And here we are celebrating Tom Ikeda's 27 years of service to the Japanese American community through Densho.
Tom's work at Densho has really helped us here at our visitor center here at Minidoka National Historic Site because it's been a huge resource for us, not only to use for our research in interpreting the story, but also when visitors come in, a lot of them are descendants and maybe don't know about their own family history. I know I didn't know about my own family history, and that there were records that I could find about my own family members. And so it's really nice to be able to point them towards Densho and to help them find more information about their families and to learn more about the history.
As Tom's long-lost unofficial nephew, when I think about his legacy on the Japanese American community, I think about his mentorship and the inspiration he continues to give to the next generation of Japanese American historians, scholars, park rangers, and community members. I think about Tom's legacy in the context of Minidoka, and as folks who do know, the Ikeda family was incarcerated here, family number 17472. And in our visitor center, we have some memories of Victor Junks Ikeda, and one specific quote speaks about the forced removal process and arriving in a town called Eden, not too far from Minidoka. And it reads, Eden seemed like the end of the track and the end of the world. As we reflect on this quote, I think of the work that Densho and Tom has done in terms of the legacy of his family story and also of all descendants and survivors of Minidoka. As Densho continues to connect the rest of the world to Japanese American story and Japanese American history and resources, we want to send our heartfelt thank you to Densho and to you, Tom, for your years of service. Thanks for being a friend, and we're excited to continue to do great work with Densho.
Hello folks, my name is Dale Minami. I'm an attorney in San Francisco. I've known Tom since the mid-1990s, and at that time he expressed his idea for this vision, which became Densho. And I was fascinated and have followed his career since then, and Densho as well. And I've been really inspired by what he's done, not just with his preservation of Japanese American histories, the interviews, which are a lasting contribution, but the way he's connected the histories and contributions of other marginalized groups to Japanese Americans. He has also spoken out on social justice issues with great courage, and I think that's probably inspired me as much as all the other things he's done.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for all that you've done for Densho, and thank you for all that you've done for the field. On a personal level, I'm so grateful to you for the friendship that I've grown to cherish. I'm so grateful to you for the advice and the counsel. I'm so grateful to you for being so willing to partner deeply and meaningfully with Janum. And I'm also so grateful to you for being my #1 culture decoder when I came in as an outsider, knowing absolutely nothing about this community. But on the bigger scheme of things, in the bigger picture, when I think about what your achievement has been, what I do know is that it's very easy to be a visionary. But it's not easy to be a visionary that is able to imagine the impossible and to make that impossible into a reality. And that's exactly what you've done at Densho.
It was so fun looking at those old photos, and really I'm at a loss of words about the kind things that were just said. You know, thank you, Kurt, Emily, Dale, and Anne for the video tributes. And thank you, Dominique and Toshiko, for your very, very kind words. I have to admit, it feels very, very surreal that today is my last day as Densho's Executive Director. I stepped into this role at the end of 1995 when I was only 39 years old. It sounds funny now, but back then, I thought of myself as being old and experienced after doing a 15-year whirlwind career in business and technology, mostly at Microsoft. Back then, I thought Densho was going to be, at most a 5-year project to film a couple of hundred oral history interviews with my Japanese American elders, and then make these, personal testimonies available on the internet. Well, that 5-year project quickly turned into 27 years. What I didn't know at the beginning was how much I would be changed by sitting down and listening to the stories of my Japanese American elders about what happened to them during World War II. I was hearing information not found in any book I read. And even more importantly, as I sat face to face with each narrator, I was seeing and feeling the emotional impact of what happened. After all of these years, what I think about most are the hundreds of men and women I've interviewed. I think about the funny stories I've laughed at and the personal sad stories where I've cried. When you listen to these stories, you can't help but be changed. And so it does not surprise me that the 1,000 oral histories we've collected have been discovered and reached millions, primarily from our website, but also from the films, books, and curriculum developed from the stories. These precious, personal stories were also the foundation for other projects at Densho. After collecting stories, we quickly realized that getting historic photographs, documents, newspapers, letters, diaries, and maps would really augment the stories. So we digitized over 100,000 of these objects. We then realized the events, places, people, and organizations mentioned in the interviews would need explaining. So we created a comprehensive online encyclopedia with 1,600 articles. Another really meaningful project from the interviews was realizing we were interviewing only about 1% of the Japanese Americans who were incarcerated. And so we undertook a project to create a comprehensive database of every Japanese American who was incarcerated during World War II. We wanted to acknowledge every individual so they could be remembered. So the simple act of capturing the personal stories of our elders has grown and grown. Over the 27 years of doing oral histories, the large majority of the people we've interviewed have passed on. Whenever one of our narrators died, it was always difficult for the staff and me. In those sad moments, we would take some comfort in knowing we preserve this person's story, not only for today, but for generations to come. We know these new, younger generations will learn from these stories about the dangers of xenophobia and racism, the importance of allyship, and the healing and learning experience of fighting for redress. These are important lessons not only for today, but also for the future. As the years went by, we understood the huge responsibility and sometimes burden of preserving and sharing these stories. Our elders gave us these stories and trusted us to share with future generations. Knowing this, 6 years ago, after I turned 60 years old, we started thinking about what Densho would look like after I left. We recognized we had work to do to grow and change Densho in ways to make it easier for another person to eventually become the next executive director. So for the next 5 years, we got to work and made Densho a stronger, more robust, and more sustainable organization. Last year, we decided it was time to start looking, and we did an exhaustive search for Densho's next executive director. We interviewed qualified individuals across the country, from Hawaii to the West Coast, to the East Coast, and even in Canada. When we finished this rigorous process, there was a unanimous selection by the board and staff, and this person was Naomi Ostwald Kawamura. I remember when I did my first interview with Naomi, the 45-minute interview quickly became 90 minutes as we excitedly talked about history, education, art, technology, and management. Needless to say, I was very impressed with Naomi during the interview process. But more importantly, the past 2 months, Naomi has been on staff, and during this time, I've gotten to know her better, and I'm even more impressed as time goes on. You'll meet Naomi shortly, and will be able to see firsthand what I mean. And finally, I want to talk about you. The power of Densho comes from community, and you are that community. A regret I have today is that this event is not an in-person event where I could see you each face to face. But I want you to know this. Thank you so much. The past 27 years have truly been an honor and privilege to serve the community. The support and love you have given Densho and me has been generous and heartfelt. I also want to acknowledge my family, Sarah, Tani, and Casey. You not only supported me, but you sacrificed to allow me to work at Densho. I could not have done it without you. Thank you, family, and thank all of you. In closing, I ask all of you who are watching to share your generous support with Naomi and Densho, not only today, but in the future. Thank you.
Tom, in my capacity as Executive Director of Washington State's Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs, we honor and celebrate your contributions of using the Japanese American World War II incarcerees and their story, their legacy to advance justice and civil rights for all people and improve the quality of life for Washingtonians and Americans. But don't just take it from me. Since his time as a congressman, it's been a priority of Governor Jay Inslee to make sure that all people are honoring the legacy of Japanese Americans. And when he heard of your retirement, he had this to say. Dear Tom, congratulations on your retirement after 27 years of service to Densho in its efforts to ensure every American knows the history of the World War II incarceration of Japanese Americans. To become the nation to which we aspire, we must learn from our history, both our brightest moments and our darkest days, rather than hide from it. Such retrospection strengthens both our national character and our democracy. Your work as Executive Director at Densho has been instrumental in this noble endeavor, and I am confident your colleagues will build upon your distinguished legacy. With a ceremonial transfer of leadership to your successor, in sight of colleagues, community, family, and friends, we celebrate your immeasurable contributions to promoting the ideals of this country and urging each of us to play our part in fulfilling America's foundational promise of liberty and justice for all. As you step away from the Executive Director position, we wish you all the best in your newest role, retiree. You can step away with peace of mind, knowing that the work lives on and will outlive all of us. On behalf of the state of Washington, thank you for your indispensable work. May you find continued fulfillment in retirement. Very truly yours and personally signed, Jay Inslee, Governor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Toshiko. Thank you.
I speak on behalf of this entire community when I say thank you and okage-sama de.
Congratulations, Tom. Whew. Wow. And now it's our turn to help Densho continue on a path towards successful future. We just got word that we are, drum roll, boom, 77% of the way to our goal. And if you've already given, thank you so much. If you've yet to make a donation, please do so by clicking the donate button below or texting Densho to the number on your screen. And please make sure that you make use of the option to add a personal note of gratitude to Tom. We're going to give you a moment to follow up on that donation link. And while we do that, we're going to hear we're going to hear first of several compositions from writers who participated in Densho's 2022 Women's Month Challenge, Women's History Month Challenge. Each of the writers you'll hear from tonight wrote poems or short essays in dialogue from photos from the Densho archives or other collections.
In this first clip, we'll hear from Lauren Ito, a Gosei poet, photographer, and community craftswoman who resides in San Francisco. Ito wrote this poem for her great-grandmother, Momoko Fujioka, a legendary angler who can be seen here in front of Gyoko Ken restaurant in Seattle. Momoko, a Nisei born in Fife, Washington, was incarcerated along with her 4 children and husband at Minidoka. I'll let Lauren take it from here.
I'm Lauren Ito, and this poem is called Arrival as We. It's dedicated to the women in my life and the women in our community. Thousands of women hum in my blood, forced to play God, cradled their knives with a gentle hand, lifted gazes to the horizon and summoned air, tucked it into laugh lines, a teacup, a birthmark, a prayer, for generations yet to unfurl, knowing breath is never promised, always, especially these days, always, always. Remember this, inhaling sunrise and bird song, we never arrive alone.
That was absolutely incredible. And in keeping with the theme of honoring the women in our community, we're about to welcome someone very special to the stage.
She is someone you will come to know well as the incoming executive director of Densho. Naomi Ostwald Kawamura was selected unanimously by the search committees because she blew us all away. It seems she was perfectly made for the job, and she has fallen right into place during her onboarding.
Her background couldn't be better for this position. It's incredible that she has such a strong background in both education and nonprofit leadership, as well as fundraising. I love that she's worked in many different roles in nonprofits over the course of her career. That kind of 360-degree perspective really lends itself to excellent leadership.
It's true. And what's even better is that she is so kind-hearted and connects with the very soul of this work. She is an exceptional leader, and there are tremendous works ahead with Naomi at the helm. So without further ado, I am so excited to welcome to the stage Naomi Ostwald Kawamura.
Thank you, Toshiko and Dominique. My first day with Densho was already 2 months ago on September 1st of this year. Tom Ikeda, who I've come to learn is incredibly generous, kindly offered to pick me up that morning to drive me into the office. As soon as I buckled my seatbelt in Tom's car, we quickly engaged in what has become an ongoing conversation. On this first day, we talked about the changing landscape of the city of Seattle, where I had spent my undergraduate years as a student at the University of Washington. We talked about our experience at UW, where we are both alumni. We talked about our families, the role of history in our everyday lives, and what brings us to this work. As we drove, Tom suggested a slightly longer but more scenic drive through parts of the International District of Seattle, the area where Densho has been based for the past 27 years. He pointed out significant sites in the area, including the Seattle Betsuin Buddhist Temple, along with areas at the center of discussions that might bring potential changes to the neighborhood. While change has become a key topic of our ongoing conversations, so is what Tom and I both hope will remain. What I know will remain unchanged will be the ongoing importance of Densho's work to preserve and educate others about Japanese American history to ensure that the history of the wartime incarceration is not forgotten. We live in a time in which there's a growing movement to remove or suppress books in schools and libraries, including Julie Otsuka's book, When the Emperor Was Divine, on the wartime incarceration of Japanese Americans. Acts like this renew the sense of urgency around Densho's work and remind us that these actions reflect more deep-seated xenophobia and calls to mind how Densho has always centered the stories of survivors to bring public awareness to the lives impacted by the incarceration. On my first day with Densho, I also attended a presentation of one of Densho's oral history programs at Lakeshore Retirement Community. There, I heard stories from and met a number of survivors, including Homer Yasui. The stories were touching, some humorous, and some very painful. Participants also included Tom's parents, Junks and Mary Ikeda, who I had the pleasure to meet. In the past 2 months, Tom and I have also taken the time to meet supporters here and in California, and this included time with representatives from the Japanese American National Museum, Go for Broke, Gardena Valley Japanese Cultural Institute, among others, reminding me that Densho works in solidarity with others in this space. With every new introduction to Densho's community of supporters, I have also been greeted with the warmest of welcomings. I have been touched by the community Tom has thoughtfully helped to cultivate, and I promise to continue to build upon this work. Even with this change of leadership, Densho will always remain a community-grounded organization, stewarding our community stories and history into this next chapter of the organization. And in telling the next story of Densho, education will be a key focal point. I bring with me my long commitment to the areas of teaching and learning, and I want to see Densho grow to become a leader in the educational space as well. Densho will continue to provide extensive contextual knowledge and resources about the Japanese American wartime experience, as we have always done so, through our innovative approaches to technology and to the development of online resources and educational programming. We will continue to actively locate and seek those stories that require surfacing and to address any gaps in our present-day understanding of JA history to tell a fuller picture of the Japanese American wartime experience and of the broader community. We'll also be thinking about how our resources can more actively support the work of classroom teachers, history educators, historians, scholars, and storytellers. Densho will ensure that materials surrounding this important chapter in history are not just accessible, but that our community's histories are reflected in what young people are learning about our nation's past. I believe that understanding our history can leave us more empowered, and hopefully this will lead towards education, respect, and healing. And with that, together we can transform our schools, our neighborhoods, and our communities into equitable and more welcoming spaces. For those working in the spaces of education, as educators, we recognize that present-day conditions are rooted in events from the past. We locate ourselves as part of a longer arc of human history when we know where we've been, where we are, and imagine where we could go. While I don't have a familial connection to the wartime incarceration history, I have been on the receiving end of the gifts that are the Japanese American institutions that were founded by our Issei, Nisei, and Sansei activists. I have attended events at Nisei Week, exhibits at the Japanese American National Museum with my parents and my daughter, and importantly, I utilized Densho's encyclopedia and digital repository while as a PhD candidate at the University of British Columbia. I am deeply honored to step into this role and contribute to a community that has been so central to Densho's work. I recognize that I represent the next generation of JA leaders that will continue to do this important work. Along the way, I will also continue to acknowledge Densho's past, to Tom's work, and the contributions of our early founding supporters to establish the organization, as well as locating Densho as part of a longer arc of Japanese American memory, activism, and community. And I set my sights towards our future with optimism and hope that together we will collectively construct a Densho for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now you have all gotten a sense of what we're so excited about. I love how she acknowledges the key role of education. And Densho is a premier resource to educate folks, to advance social justice. And you know, Densho's mission is to ensure that every American knows the history of the World War II incarceration, and Naomi really gets it.
Absolutely. You know, that really struck me as well. And there's a key piece that I was listening to, and even in my whole time of being able to be here with Densho, is to think about that the erasure that's trying to happen amongst all of our ethnicities and our cultures. But it takes me back to a proverb, as a Sankofa proverb, which is, you cannot go into the future without taking the knowledge and the wisdom of your ancestors of the past. What I love what Densho does is making sure that generations to come will always know who they are and stand strong on that grounding that they are indeed seen and thriving as well. So I love this. Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Now, in order to help, let me just keep going. In order to help Naomi write the next chapter in Densho's history, we must make sure that she has the full support of the community. And that includes you and your financial contributions. Let's check and see how far we are from reaching our fundraising goal.
Okay, we're getting there, you guys. Yes. Keep going. That is amazing. Keep those donations rolling in as we continue with the program. As you just heard, Tom and Naomi have been working very closely together over the past several months as part of a very thoughtful onboarding process. And that process will continue in some capacity even after Naomi takes the reins as executive director tonight.
Absolutely. We're going to get a little insight into what that process has looked like as we welcome them both back to the stage one last time.
Thank you, Dominique, and thank you, Toshiko. The letter from Governor Inslee was a total surprise, so that was good. Yeah. Naomi, great job on your address.
Thank you.
And I think people are getting a sense of why we were so excited about you. Your depth of knowledge and understanding of public history, education, the community, made you this really strong candidate. But I want to talk about kind of this transition. You talked a little bit about this intergenerational. I'm a baby boomer, you're younger, so it's like a passing of the next generation. But it's also kind of this interesting passing in terms of, I'm by training an engineer, a builder, and I've over the last 27 years have built things, and you're an educator and a historian. I'm curious, when you see what we've built, what are some ideas you have in terms of taking it the next step?
Yeah, so like applying that kind of educator lens to the organization, what I imagine for Densho is that it's been around now for almost 3 decades, and that we can kind of see ourselves as real leaders in the area of community archives, in public history, in really community-grounded history. And so I think that we could start thinking ourselves as a teaching organization. Like, what does that look like if we sort of look at our organization as an opportunity to teach others who might be interested in doing something similar. I studied this sort of intergenerational shift in Nikkei organizations in the US and Canada for my doctoral research. And what kept coming up with the younger staff was that they would sort of recognize that these kinds of JA organizations didn't exist for those that founded it when they were in their 20s and their 30s, and that it was a real opportunity that you could create and have a career, a real professional pathway in working and serving in your community. And so that, I think, is such an incredible asset. I think it's such a gift that I am able to work in a JA organization. And so I want to sort of apply that and also extend that to the next generation, but do that in a more formal way. So how could we really mentor and steward next gen folks who are interested in archives, in public history or digital humanities, technology, nonprofit management, and really sort of think of Densho as now real leaders in this JA history sort of space. But I think that already in just the last few months working with the staff and you, it's just been an incredibly welcoming and lovely place to be. And so I think that that's something that we need to be telling that story a lot more.
Well, that's really interesting. And thank you for saying those words. But this idea of Densho actually being in place for like young professionals, it's a career that, you're right, 30 years ago when I was starting, those organizations really weren't there. And we only have a little bit of time. I mean, any questions? The last question for me.
Yeah. So I know, like, we've talked so much about kind of what this transition will mean, and something that I drew from how you've allowed Densho to survive for 27 years is that you often talked about that you like to being nimble, that you're able to adapt to changes to technology. But what I would be interested to know is, like, what would you like to remain unchanged, and what would you like to kind of be something that stays kind of core to what we do?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, most people always ask me about the change because they saw me as kind of this innovator and always kind of adapting to change. But the question of what to keep, I mean, I think back to really the first meetings of Densho and why we were, collecting these stories. And it was not just to collect stories, it was to really address these lessons. I mean, in particular, I remember the conversations about not wanting this to happen to another community. And it opened up these discussions about xenophobia and racism and how pervasive it is in our country, and how we needed to really shine a light on this so that we could address it. And then we had this sort of audacious goal that, to really make change, every American needs to know this history and understand these lessons. And so this kind of opened up another, I think, key thing that I would love to see stay with Densho. It's this concept of sharing and collaboration. That the very early model of Densho is, we're going to collect all these materials. And we have like 1,000 oral histories, over 100,000 historic photographs and documents, a big encyclopedia. It goes on and on. We offer all those things for free. I mean, they're there to be used. And I think in the spirit of sharing, other individuals and organizations have seen that, and they want to start collaborating. They said, this makes sense. And when you have that, it's easier to kind of collaborate together. So this sense of being very open and sharing, I think, is really important. Which kind of leads me to this next thing I want to talk about. This foundation of sharing and collaborating really comes from this foundation of support and generosity that I got from the Japanese American elders, the Niseis. And so I have to tell a story. When we first started Densho and I went out and talked to the community in meetings, I would kind of sense and feel this reluctance or hesitancy from people about sharing their stories. And I think some of it was cultural, saying, oh, my story isn't that important, or you should interview someone else and don't do this. But there was also a lot of pain, and people saying, you know what, we really don't want to, kind of uncover these painful memories again, and the friction within the community. And as I was getting this resistance, there was a woman, a Japanese American leader, Aki Kurose. And during one of those meetings, she stood up and spoke out, and she calls me Tommy, and she says, Tommy, what you're doing is just so important, and I'm fully in support, and in fact, I'll be one of your first interviewers, or interviewees, kind of narrators. And that really made a difference in terms of, I think, turning the tide in the community. And so after we did the interview with Aki, a few days later, she came to the office, and she brought me something. She brought me this trophy. It's a baseball trophy. She knew I loved sports, but she brought this and said, this is for you. And I said, oh, so what's this for? And she says, well, it's a symbol. It's to show you that I'm supporting you. That it was a vote of confidence, to me. And I remember it was something that I've had on my desk ever since then. And when times got tough, I would look at this. And so today, on this day we're transitioning, actually this moment, what I'd like to do is make you now the official executive director of Densho. And with this, I'm giving this trophy to you, as my vote of confidence in you, Naomi. And I just know what you do and how you would do it is what the organization needs. So thank you for doing this, and please take this.
Oh, thank you so much. I hope to make you proud.
No, you.
Thank you.
And we could go on and on, but at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Dominique and Toshiko. So, thank you.
I'm so honored that everyone gets to witness this. And I just love that there's a shared understanding that it's not just about preserving our own stories as a community, but it's that we are channeling those stories and the lessons learned from there to safeguard other communities who are present-day targets of racism and xenophobia, because those attitudes absolutely still live on in America.
Absolutely.
And Naomi, I can echo Tom's sentiment and say that you have my vote of confidence as well. And I know that you're going to do an incredible job of helping Densho and the whole community in writing its next story.
Now that you've gotten a taste of what the future holds for Densho, we're going to make one more final ask of your support. We are already, amazing, 97% of the way to our goal tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you've already donated, thank you, thank you, thank you again. If you have not, now is your time. You can make your gifts by clicking the donate button below or texting Densho to the number on your screen. And while you're making those final donations, we're going to hear from 2 more writers that Densho has worked with in the past year as a part of the Writers Response Challenge. Like Lauren, these next 2 writers also responded to photos from the archives.
Hello, my name is Nikiko Masumoto, and this is my piece entitled How to Wonder. I arbitrarily clicked on a file link and your image exploded onto my screen. In a flash of sepia tone, circa 1920, you exposed the limitations of my own imagination. And I thought I was a feminist. Nikkei warrior motorcycle girl, you look like me, or my auntie, or my bachan, or my cousin, or my imagined daughter. Sitting relaxed, I know this isn't your first ride. Your booted foot is at ease on the pedal, your arms extended forward and ahead, ready to take flight on dusty back roads into silence and your own fortress of wonder. I can tell you know the country. Wide open spaces do not scare you. You know how to kickstart an engine, how to find your way back home before dark without maps, how to keep demons at bay. I wonder if I know you, or where you have gone today. How many seeds of freedom did you plant along the open road before you had to make do in prison camps? How can I honor your fierceness? To whom can I convey my gratitude for capturing your stance so that I might remember what it feels like to be free?
Hey there, my name is Karen Ishizuka, and this is something I wrote for Densho about a government photograph I found of my Auntie Lily when she was held in the so-called Assembly Center at Santa Anita at the beginning of World War II. The caption of this War Relocation Authority photo reads, Mrs. Lily Okura poses with a statue of Seabiscuit in Santa Anita Park, now an assembly center for evacuees of Japanese ancestry. The photo was taken by WRA photographer Clem Albers on April 6, 1942. But this is a photo that conceals more than it shows. That in just 7 days, the racetrack was turned into the longest running temporary detention center holding Japanese Americans before they were sent to permanent camps across the country for the duration of the war. That my Auntie Lily, along with her husband, another uncle, 2 more aunts, and my grandmother were among the 8,500 crammed into horse stalls. That my grandfather had been arrested by the FBI the night of December 7th, 1941, and was, on the day this photo was taken, imprisoned at Fort Missoula, Montana, after which he was sent to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, Camp Livingston, Louisiana, and Santa Fe, New Mexico, before released to join his family in the Jerome concentration camp in Arkansas. That just out of frame of this photo, in the parking lot of the racetrack, were 500 newly erected barracks to hold the 10,000 others who couldn't fit into the horse stalls. But why was Lily, who had been a dancer and one-time understudy for Anna May Wong, hoisted onto the platform and posed with this legendary racehorse? Neither a journalist nor a writer, why was she directed to hold a notebook in one hand while holding a pen to her chin with the other, as if coyly pondering what to write? And rendering the photograph even more staged, genderized, and perplexing, why was she positioned as if modeling her modest yet stylish outfit with this archetypal symbol of American virility? Even as we know more about the forced exclusion and mass incarceration, this abhorrent violation of democracy, photographs like this one make me shake my head and wonder, what in the bleep were they thinking?
Wow, those were really impressive. And like Karen said, the archives often leave us with more questions than answers. But I love that Densho is not afraid to ask those difficult questions and to create a space for us all to explore their answers. And apparently, you all love that work that Densho does as well.
Yeah, I'm delighted to share that we not only met our goal, but we exceeded it. Our final total for tonight is over $860,000. You all really showed up for Densho. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. robust crowd here. This is a tremendous testament to the community's confidence in Densho and our gratitude for Tom and our trust in Naomi to lead us in telling our next story.
We've got one final writer to close out our program, but before we hear from him, we want to thank our sponsors. Thank you so much to the Oki Foundation, Okage Samade, Atsuhiko and Ina Goodwin Tatayuchi Foundation, Ron Tanamura and Tina Yamagiwa, Amazon, Costco Wholesale, and Shimojima, Global Enterprises, Colbert and Gail Matsumoto, Island Insurance Foundation, Concourse Concessions, Group Health Foundation, Mitsubishi Corporation in the Americas, MJ Takisaki Incorporated, Union Bank, Bill and Lori Bryant, Victor and Mary Ikeda, Jean and Vicky Kanamori, John Y. and Reiko E. Sato Foundation, Guy and Audrey Watanabe, Irene Yamamoto.
We're going to keep those thank yous going with BCU, Japan Business Association of Seattle, the Lakeshore, Ohashi Landscape Services.
Hold on, you don't do landscaping with Ohashi, do you?
Oh, no.
That's a long time. That's a lot of landscaping.
Okay, it's the time and patience. Okay, there it is. But that's why you want them quality work. Okay, Nick Oki and the Woodburn Company. Thank you to Kirkland Performance Arts Center and Common Great. And thank you so much to everyone who made this event possible.
Now, as promised, we'll leave you with one last writer, Lane Tomosumi Shigihara. Thank you all again so much for making tonight a success, and good night.
Good night.
Hello, my name is Lane Tomosumi Shigihara, and I'm honored to join you for Densho's 2022 Virtua Gala. Tonight, I'll be reciting Vocal Young Woman, a haiku that I wrote and dedicated to my Sansei grandmother as part of Densho's 2022 Women's History Month Writing Challenge collection. Vocal Young Woman, standing up with cap and gown, standing up for rights. When she was just 17 years old, Sarah Yomogi Okada's education at President William McKinley High School in Honolulu, Hawaii, was cut short by the signing of Executive Order 9066 on February 19, 1942. Her family of 6 ordered from Hawaii to the Jerome concentration camp in Arkansas. A year later, Sarah would then graduate from the camp's Denson High School in 1943. Sarah instructed her father to copy her written replies instead of answering yes or no to the 2 questions on the U.S. government loyalty questionnaire. With question 27, they requested, "Give me an answer for our internment." With question 28, they submitted, "I will answer question 28 after getting an answer for question 27." Even though their answers were not no and no, Sarah's family was then incarcerated at the Tule Lake concentration camp in California. In 2015, Sarah became the first former internee to receive an honorary high school Kupono diploma from the State of Hawaii Department of Education. Kupono means honest, upright, decent, and reliable.